Well, good evening, everyone. Michael, soothing here. Tonight, I thought what we would talk about is a big, giant art book I have. I'm still going to do the video on poker and the World Series I told you about. I'm videotaping clips from the mini days of the World Series, and in honor of Las Vegas, I thought I would eat one of these little dice here before we look into art book. We're going to talk about the great masters a little bit. Leonardo da Vinci. I'm going to do a whole video on Da Vinci at some point because I have a fascinating article on him about his life in the National Geographic. It turns out he was quite the genius. That guy was into everything, making weapons, advanced machinery, flying machines, human anatomy, every kind of creative endeavor you can think of, besides all of his great masterworks of art, sculptures and designing buildings, you name it. I'm very thirsty. Somebody told me they liked the videos where I had ice, so I'm going to get some purified water here. I'll get from a pure filter. Otherwise, it tastes like a swimming pool, City water, town water. So we run it through a big purifier first, and then now I have nice cold water. And those of you who always complain about me having water bottles like this, see, today I'm breaking the mold and doing this. Although all these are recycled for 10 cents a piece, by the way. And we collect them, and Chelsea takes them to a charity who does it, hundreds of them. Give you a little ice on the binaural test cam that's over here. Now let's see what this dice tastes like. Edible dice. I'm going to do that poker video, but I'm afraid it will get restricted because I'll be showing clips from the actual World Series of Poker. But without the sound, I'll be doing voice-over commentary like Norman Chad. Tastes like strawberry. I think it's supposed to. Anyway, let's get this thing aligned with a look down, since that's what you guys mostly prefer. I'm not always going to do it this way, but today I will, since classic artwork is involved. Hold on. Last time I did this, I kind of figured out how to get rid of most of the shadows, so I think we're okay today on that. So Botticelli, Michelangelo, Raphael, cold water. What's not to like? Let's see what's in this big book. Great Masters. English translation by Gaston de Vere. Published it. This is an expensive book. $75. I think I got it at a thrift store for like $5 or something. But my daughter, Rachel's an artist, so I'm going to give this to her after we get done looking through some of it. Who's this guy? It's a fresco up on a ceiling of a church. When I worked in Italy, in Rome area, back in the rocket science days, there was a company there named Alinea Space up in the mountains there. And I had a chance to hang out in Rome for a few weeks. One restaurant I ate at, they had removed the paint from a ceiling and found a several 100-year-old fresco up there on the ceiling. No, that's not a type of food that someone stuck to the ceiling. That's a work of art, okay? Master of the St. Francis, the First Christmas at Greccio. That's a stylized version of Jesus, and I don't know who this is. Is that Mary or a Magi or something? Not sure. But I don't think it looked like this in Jerusalem in the manger. Although they do have a little animal here. Alright. There are many spiritual themes, and I appreciate them, but some of them are not what you would call realism. What's this one? An angel coming. I think this Renaissance art bears a lot of similarities. Many use the same styles. This one's Giotto. I think they're focusing on one artist at a time. This guy's name was Giotto, the Florentine painter, sculptor, and architect. He lived in Florence, I guess. We have a town here on the Oregon coast named Florence, named after the sister city. This is not the famous scene of the Last Supper, but it's a scene of the Last Supper by Giotto. Am I saying his name right? I know I have a couple of Italian subbies, which I appreciate because I love Italy. So please tell me if I'm saying his name wrong. I loved being in Rome. I would like to go back someday because I didn't get to see everything, only a few things. There's so much history and art and architecture there that's been there for many hundreds of years. It's not like an American town where it's only been around a short time and you don't have all the historical stuff. We didn't read anything about Giotto. Maybe we should. Detached fragment, fresco fragment prior to restoration in a church in Rome. Declaring of the Holy Year. This was Giotto. He stayed for some time in Florence. Then he was summoned to Padua by the agency of the Signora della Scala. He painted a very beautiful chapel in the Santo, a church built in those times. From there he went to Verona. Let's see, circa 1300. So this guy was around in the 1300s. It's pretty old. I wonder if they're going by, basically going in a chronology of the great artists of that era in that region. The Kiss of Judas is this one, also by Giotto. Judas the Betrayer. Wow, this one has a lot of themes. In many of the paintings of this time, you have to study them for hours to get all the details. This one has, I believe this would be the apostles out here, since there's 12 of them. think the Apostle Paul is the one who replaced Judas. This would be Jesus himself on the throne, angelic beings, some of the host of heaven. And down here you have, I think, the saints. And over here you have hell and the demonic beings. And I guess this would be a portrayal of Satan. Oh, it's called The Last Judgment. That's the name of this painting. So you have people being divided into the two realms. And those who are part of the cross of Christ, those who have accepted Christ, are part of God's kingdom. Right? So there were many, many spiritual themes, but they reflected the art and the culture of this day rather than what it would have looked like in first century Palestine or Israel, which is kind of interesting how they did it. Let's see who's going to be next. Who are we on now? It's talking about an assistant of Andrea Pisano from a design by Giotto. Let's keep going and see if we can get to a different artist. We're still on Giotto. The Death of Saint Francis of Assisi, I assume. This was painted in 1325, okay? What do we have here? They're dancing around and picking fruit. Is that the Garden of Eden, or what is that? I don't know. This one's so big you can't see all of it. Do they tell me what that is? It's part of the Botticelli Chapel, Church of St. Croce in Florence. The Life of Sandro Botticelli. So now we're going to go on to a new guy. Let's see if when he lived. What's this one? Color plate, Primavera. This looks like someone dead who's trying to snag someone who's alive. If I had more time, we would explore the themes in these paintings. But then we'd have to do this book in like 5 parts or something. And I don't know if we have time for that. The name Botticelli is derived from Botticello, Italian for small barrel or tub. And it was originally the nickname of the artist's older brother. Do you think he was a little chubby if he was named after a barrel or a tub? I think he lived in the 1400s. Yes. He was allowed to marry his... Wait a minute. Through papal dispensation, he was allowed to marry. His son, Filippino Filippi, was Botticelli's most distinguished pupil. So he had an artist for a son also. The Magnificent, somebody the Magnificent. Yeah, I think they're doing these in chronological order to show the progression of the artists over time in this region of the world. The great Italian artists. What do they say again? The great masters. Okay. We have to move along, because if we take too long, we won't get to some of the more recent work by the well-known, the better-known masters. Here we have the Adoration of the Magi. Sandro Botticelli. Oops. I hope that didn't make a loud pop. video. Let's see here. This is in the Sistine Chapel, a fresco. The Youth of Moses. And again, you have to look closely at these to see all the different things that happened as he was growing up in Egypt and was given every advantage and an advanced education, and then ended up off in the land of Midian, for some 40 or 60 years or something, before coming back to free his people. What's this one down here? Nostalgio gives a banquet in the forest to show his guests the lady and the knight. Here's the knight, and here's the lady. She looks like she's fallen over. I don't know if you can see that up close. Here she is again. She keeps running. Everything's after her. Maybe the knight has to rescue her. It's a story told in multiple works of art, but I don't know the story. This is making me curious to come back later when I have more time and read all of this stuff. The Annunciation. Uffizi Gallery in Florence. I've never visited Florence, but I visited the one in Oregon, where I live, but not the one in Italy, so I'd like to visit there. The Calumny of Apelle, again in Florence Gallery. Don't you find these works of art somehow full of grace? I think they're very graceful. It was amazing work for its time. Look at the detail on this. What is that, a brooch? What do you call that? Anyway, well, you guys are going to claim that I'm doing something rude, and I'm not. I hope you don't claim that. What's the name of this one? It looks a little bit risque. It's called Venus and Mars. Okay, so they're some of the Roman god and goddesses, is what that theme was. The Birth of Venus over here. Botticelli, Sandro Botticelli. Now we have Leonardo da Vinci, the Florentine painter and sculptor. But he did so much more than just that. Often known as the first true landscape of the Renaissance. And when did he live? No, not this guy. Somebody lived from Andrea del Verrocchio, 1435 to 1488. Oh, here we are. He lived from 1452 to 1519. So he was 67 when he died. Pretty good life. And he did all kinds of amazing things. Da Vinci was a map maker, a cartographer, a sculptor, a great artist, an inventor. He did some amazing work with human anatomy that is recognizable to this day and even used in modern medical textbooks as, depicting musculature and things. He figured out some things about biology and medicine and the human body that no one else had figured out up to that time. He made tapestries. You name it, the guy did it. Let's see what some of his work shows. Here he had some dragons. a study of dragons. I've got to show this to my daughter Rachel because she likes to do some dragon work from time to time. Head of a man. Well, I thought this was a ghoul or something. Opposite is Neptune guiding his seahorses. Oh, Rachel would really like this too, because her artwork often has horse themes that look very much like this. If I show her this, I'm going to have to take a picture of this before I forget. Excuse me while I rudely interject here, because if I don't do this now, guys, I'm going to forget to take the picture and send it to her. So here we are. Snapped the shot. Now I can email that to her later. Text it to her. And tell her that her work reminds me of Da Vinci, which I think is a good compliment. Sometime I'll show you some of her work, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. Of course, he's best known for the Mona Lisa, but we have some other things. Head of an angel, baptism of Christ. What's this one called? Ginevra da Vinci. She doesn't look very happy to me and not very beautiful, but of course, beauty is subjective. It is in the eye of the beholder, is it not? Madonna of the Carnation, 1478 to 1480. They're not sure when the work was completed. Look at the kind of, see, he was also a great architect. Look at all the architectural design he did. He could draw your eye to specific focal points in his work. He had a genius for figuring that out. Lines of sight and things like that. If they show the Last Supper that he did, you'll see how he used perspective and the vanishing point of lines to draw your eye in that photograph, in that work of art, not photograph. Here's the Adoration of the Magi. You see some recurring themes. I think this piece is so old that it had probably faded, maybe in the way it was preserved, you know. What else do we have here? I don't think they're going to show a lot of the other facets of his work, his life's work. But his art, famous though it may be, is only a tiny sliver of what he was doing with his life. Here is a bronze called Mounted Warrior, a bronze sculpture. Salacious Imp, it says here. I don't know where the imp is. Is it curled in here? Looks like a little face right there. So here you can see some of the anatomical stuff. Dissection of the, okay, this is a little gruesome, but dissection of the principal organs and their arterial system of a woman. He does here. By the way, he was the first one that figured out that cholesterol and hardening of the arteries was bad. He didn't know the reasons why it was occurring, but he was the first one to figure that out because of his fascination with anatomy and the human body. Let's see what else we have here from Da Vinci. This is a copy of the head of Christ from the Last Supper. Maybe they'll show The Last Supper. Of course, the very famous Mona Lisa. What is her little smile signifying? And the look in her eyes. What does she know that we don't? That's what has puzzled art lovers throughout the ages. What do we have over here? The plan of Imola. I think he was planning out a big palace grounds. It's like he was a developer too. And here we are. Here's the Last Supper in a form that you don't usually see it, because usually you see an improved sort of colorized version. This is prior to the 1980s restoration in progress. So they've done a restoration of this work. But you'll notice I can't really show you on this piece very easily, but all the lines in his painting will draw, like these lines of sight and perspective will draw you down to Jesus here. This one too, and these down here, these up here, all converge. See, he did that on purpose, and he also set up the painting so you could see from the below the table view. And who do we have? There are elements in here that depict, there are clues about which disciple, which apostle is which. So it's a fascinating look. Look at this one. Self-portrait in old age. So apparently Da Vinci had a big old beard. And that's an interesting self-portrait that he did with red chalk. Quite the fascinating and brilliant artist. The Virgin of the Rocks is what this piece is called. It's got a lot more darkness and contrast than some of the other things we've seen. The Battle of someone or other. This dramatic incident is untrue. On May 2nd, 1519, the day of Leonardo's death, King Francis was in Saint-Germain-en-Laye celebrating the birth of his second son. So I don't know what dramatic incident they're referring to. I guess we would have to read all of the text. What's going on here? All kinds of stuff. The copy of the battle for the standard for Leonardo's cartoon for the Battle of Anghiari, pen and ink and colored chalk. He used a lot of different mediums. So that's Da Vinci. There's an awful lot more, and I'm going to do an entire video on Da Vinci at some point and tell you a little bit more about his life. Sometime in the future, Raphael was very famous. He lived till 1520. Painter and architect. Let's see how his work looks. Presumed portrait here of a duke, the Duke of Urbino, whoever he is. Here we have head of an angel, fragment of the altarpiece of the Blessed Nicholas of Tolentino, around 1500. So this is quite a long time ago. Now, this is still Raphael, but his style is so different here, depicting Christ on the cross, angels, and Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of Jesus, and This would have been the Apostle John, the only one who stuck by him. And that would have been his mother, Mary. This was probably Martha and Mary Magdalene. I don't know. So, interesting. There's a lot of different types of depictions of the Madonna, but I don't think they look anything like Mary would have looked, because they're depicted the way with this Renaissance style. What else do we have? We have a knight here slaying some kind of beast or dragon. Yeah, St. George and the dragon. It's a small dragon, and it's got sort of dog-like feet, strangely. Raphael, the Deposition. I don't know exactly what that one is about, but I'll figure it out. It has to do with the day of the crucifixion, obviously, because you see the 3 crosses up here. That this must be when they took the body and they were going to lay him in the tomb. That's my assumption. Procession to Calvary. Is this in a black and white? Tempera and oil on panel. A lot of the great artwork of the day was done as frescoes on walls and ceilings rather than on canvas. And so a lot of it survived in that form, but it's difficult to preserve it for hundreds of years because of acids in the air, dust and oils, things like that will eventually degrade it in sunlight itself. Cosmic radiation, you know. No naked loves are to be seen in the fresco. Fosse was doubtless making a reference to Marcantonio Raimondi's engraved version, which indeed incorporates cherub-like figures. There were a lot of cherub-like figures in the art of this day. Pope Julius II, 1512. Looked kind of old there. Painted by the prophet Isaiah here. But what's he... Well, that's not the 10 Commandments then. He's writing something. See, there's cherubs up there, but I'm not sure why the cherubs were always showing up. Anatomically correct cherubs were always showing up in some of these works of art. I'm going to have to... It shows my art history ignorance, and that's a little embarrassing, so now I'm curious and I'm going to have to study up why cherubs are always showing up in this Renaissance art. The School of Athens, the great Greco-Roman era of learning and art, cultural advancement, was an amazing time in human history, I would say. Here we have, what's it called? Galatia. Okay, again, I'm going to have to call on my Italian friends to tell me what that is. I think this would be some of the Greco-Roman mythology gods and goddesses. That's got to be what that is. We've got a horse and like Neptune or somebody coming out of water and intercepting someone, and a minotaur over here, and some kind of sea creatures that look like dolphins, but they have teeth. Somebody's riding on those, and these cherubs with arrows. Julius. The encounter between Attila the Hun and St. Leo the Great. You know, I want to go back and study some of these works of art with a magnifier so I can figure out the details of what's going on. Because there's so many small details worked into these. And it would be interesting to see what the artist was portraying and reading some of the descriptions. It takes some time to do that. So many of these works are depicting multiple events in one painting. Multiple different timelines. The expulsion of Heliodorus from the temple. Don't know that story either. I must not have been paying close attention when I was in world art class. Oh wait, I never did take world art class. Maybe that's why. The Deliverance of St. Peter. This is in the Vatican in Rome. I'd like to go there someday. Have not been to the Vatican. I haven't even been to the Colosseum, but I got to go to a lot of the other places in Rome. What is that musical instrument? Some kind of ancient instrument. Somebody was making music. Another Raphael piece. Raphael. It's time for a little, the ice is gone. It's very hot and stuffy today. And I turned off the aircon because I didn't want you to have to listen to it in the background. All right. The miraculous draught of fishes. These birds are waiting for some fish, I would say. Well, I'm going to move ahead at a fairly fast clip because, who's this guy? The vision of Ezekiel. Ezekiel saw a whirling thing with beasts and things coming down from heaven. Like a prophecy of the end times. And Daniel saw many similar things. The prophet Daniel, who went to Babylon, Persia. Leda and the Swan. After Leonardo da Vinci's now lost painting. Notice that the swan is barely depicted, but Leda is depicted more fully. Right. Portrait of Cardinal Bibbiena. All right. The life of Michelangelo. I think Michelangelo is the best known artist and sculptor. And so we'll check out some of his art. I got to see the great fountain. I wonder if they'll show it here. Where he and the artist were battling with each other. I forget how the story goes. Wow, look at this. This thing is huge. It's another one I'm going to have to come back to and study at length. I hope I'm not cheating you guys out by going through this too fast, but remember, this is not supposed to be an art class. It's supposed to be ASMR. where we're just relaxing you and soothing you. So if I'm going a little too fast, if you like page turning videos, okay, this is a statue of David, a famous one in marble, 1501. A lot of these artists lived at the same time, and they were competing with each other in some cases. I was starting to tell you about the fountain, and again, my viewers from the Rome area might be able, Roma might be able to tell you what that's about, because I don't remember with precision. But there was a battle going on between the sculptures of Michelangelo at that fountain and the architecture, where there was a spear being pointed in the direction of the building. Two different sculptors at work. Forget who the other guy was. Here's the prophet Jonah, and a big fish is coming to swallow him right there. When the Bible talks about the story of Jonah being swallowed and being in the whale for 3 days, I believe the intention of the story is not to imply that Jonah was alive for those 3 days, but that he died. And after he was basically regurgitated by the fish, whale, or whatever it was, God resurrected him, because he would be what's called in biblical prophecy a type of Jesus' death and resurrection after 3 days. So the story of Jonah has dual meaning. The tomb of Pope Julius II. Look at this amazing sculptures. Remember, they didn't have modern tools of any kind in that day. So how they did this in marble with the instruments they had at the time is just amazing to me. There was no computer to help you design anything or to execute a pattern with, computer automated drills or anything like that. So it's truly amazing what they made and how they did it. I'm in awe when I look at what they were able to do. The Florence Pieta, marble height. A model for St. Peter's Cathedral, 1539. Michelangelo's plan, he was planning out a whole architecture here, which is also amazing. I think because it's getting late and I have a doctor appointment tomorrow, I'm going to have to get my eyes fixed somehow, if they're fixable. Well, this is pretty gruesome looking. Detail from the Last Judgment. Here's somebody who's turned into, I don't know, a creature with no bones. And this is all the Last Judgment. Once again, I'm going to have to come back and check this out in much greater detail. Someday in the not distant future, I'll start a series on Christian doctrines and the great difficulties and great questions of difficulty that people pose and try to provide some insight, because I've been studying this my whole life. Questions like, why would God create a universe and a world that contains so much evil? People who are so intent on harming others and children. Why would a good God allow such things? There's a long list of difficult questions like that people wonder about. There are answers to some of those questions, which may or may not satisfy everyone, but it would give cause for thought. So we'll look at some of that in the future, maybe on a different channel. Michelangelo, Crucifixion of Jesus. You can see they had many, many spiritual themes. Is it just writing from here on? No. Here we have Portrait of a Man, so-called Ariosto. This guy's Titian. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. Nulli me tangere. Here's the miracle of the newborn child. I just noticed that my battery went dead on my audio source, the Tascam, and I don't have the slightest clue how long ago it went dead. So I'm going to wrap things up now that I replaced the batteries in it. I don't know how much we missed. I hope you didn't miss a half hour's worth of material, because when I edit, then I'm going to find out. I'm always saddened when this happens. Here we have Titian, the artist, doing a work called Flora. I guess that's her name, and she would appear to be what we would call Rubenesque, because the artist Ruben depicted his female subjects as being plus size women, but this was done by Titian. Now, what is this in her hand? I have no idea. It looks like some plants and a flower or something, but I don't really know. Here is the Assumption. Are we sure that's not called the Ascension? I'm not sure that's correct, but here it says the Assumption, and that must be Mary rather than Jesus himself. All right. Uh-oh. The Bacchanal of the Andrians. I believe that means they're having a rather risque party. I've heard the word bacchanalian in reference to wild parties that involve wine, women, and song, and all kinds of other activities. So we'll skip that one so I don't get into trouble. And the Deposition, 1525. It's at the Louvre, Paris. What else do we have? What is this, a pen and ink? These are some of the other artists of the day that would appear. The tribute money. Portrait of Francis I, 1538. Portrait of some cardinal or other, Pietro Benibo. Portrait of Charles V with a hound. something slightly disturbing about that portrait. I don't know. Death of Saint Peter the Martyr. It's one of the first martyrs. Stephen was the first. The penitent Magdalene. That would be Mary Magdalene, I assume. She's feeling a bit of remorse for some of the debauchery she was involved in before. I will make no comment because, again, I'm avoiding trouble. La Bella is the name of this work. And this is in a gallery in Florence, 1535. Dege Andrea Gritti Tiziano. The Venus of Urbino. Here is a very relaxed little doggy right here. Now what's going on in the background? What is that? Somebody's in prayer or something? Anyway, I think what she's telling us is, I kind of do whatever I want, so don't be judgmental. That seems to be her commentary, if we can read her expression. We're getting into the Roman Emperor era here. Octavius Augustus from the 12 Caesars series. Interesting. We watched a series on Rome not long ago. It was quite fascinating, actually. All right. We're about at the end of this book, and I know all we did was glance at some of the artwork without going into any detailed commentary. So you'll have to forgive that, because that's the only way. If I was to do a 2 or 3 parter, you guys wouldn't watch part 2 or 3, because no one ever does. So, water sounds. A little bit of water sounds for you. Over here, and then over here, and then I need some more. What's this depicting here? The martyrdom of St. Lawrence. I don't know who St. Lawrence is. Once again, something I have to study. But this is at the Church of the Gesuiti in Venice. Once again, I'm certain I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. The glory of the Holy Trinity, it says here. Let me see if I can study this and find whether it is theologically correct. I'm afraid not. Because if you study biblical theology, God the Father never exists in a physical form. Jesus adopted a human form and added that to his nature. He was already a spiritual being before that who could take on form. And this would be the Holy Spirit. This dove would be depicting that. So they're a little bit incorrect on the theology of it, but they're trying to do an artistic depiction. So Diana and the Action, National Gallery of Scotland in Edinburgh. I don't know what that is. Is that the goddess Diana or some other Diana? Uh-oh. There's some violent act going on there we don't want to know about. Venus and Adonis. Again, there's a story there somewhere. a story that I should know, but don't know, or don't remember. Perseus and Andromeda were into the Greco-Roman mythological gods and goddesses. I remember studying quite a bit about them, but that was so many decades ago, so I can't remember everything. Here's the chronology. Marco Polo was born in 1254. I hope you all know that from history class. Oh, this is interesting because it talks about all these different events. The University of Pisa, that's not pizza, not Leaning Tower of Pizza, and not Pisa, it's Pisa. Okay, I know how to pronounce that one at least, a little bit, though I've been told I don't. Fascinating, all these facts about what happened in various years with all these big artists. 1490, for example, Leonardo designs the second Paradiso, a theatrical spectacle produced for somebody or other's wedding, Sforza, Aragon. 1492. Jews, Muslims, and other non-Catholics were expelled from Spain by order of the Inquisition. I think the Inquisition was not a very good thing. But look, also in 1492, Leonardo da Vinci designs a prototype flying machine. Like I said, he was way ahead of his time. But speaking of time, that's all the time we have for now. And so, I hope you were relaxed by this video and got a little bit of exposure to the Renaissance style of artwork of that era, the 14 and 1500s, 15th and 16th century. And take care, everyone. Don't ASMR and drive. Until next time. Bye-bye.